Chapter 2. So You Want to Be a Magician. Success didn't come like magic for Harry. How does someone become a magician after all? It's not like becoming a doctor or a lawyer. There's no school for magicians. It took Harry years of hard work. First, of course, a magician has to learn lots of tricks. Harry was always looking for new tricks and illusions. Even after he became very famous, he watched other magicians, read books on magic, and wrote everything down in notebooks. He always kept a notebook by his bed in case he thought of something in the middle of the night. Being a magician also takes practice, and more practice. Harry practiced in his tricks over and over again. He did special exercises to keep his hands and feet flexible and fast. He carried a coin with him and flipped it through his fingers whenever he wasn't performing. Try it. It's harder than it looks. The vanishing coin. But beyond learning and practicing, Harry also had to work on selling himself. Even the best magician needs an audience. Harry had to find ways to make people come and see his act. He had to get people's attention. One of Harry's first magic acts was called the Brothers Houdini. His younger brother, Theo, was his partner. They did card tricks and mind reading, disappearing acts, and illusions. An illusion is something that seems to have happened but logically couldn't have. For instance, have you ever seen a magician pull a coin out of someone's ear? That's an illusion. Or a magician rips a sheet of paper into bits, then presto, it's all back in one piece. Logically, it's not possible for the paper to put itself back together, or for a magician to find a coin in someone's ear. But the trick is done so quickly that it looks real to people watching. Harry and Theo did a lot of these kinds of tricks. They did their act anywhere they could find a place to put on their show, and they always set aside money to send home to their mother. One of the most exciting places they performed was in the sideshow act at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. Harry was just 19 and Theo was 17. Theo and Harry got along well. Theo was a lot like Harry in some ways. He loved magic too. He later had a career on his own as a magician. But there were problems. One night, Theo messed up the best trick. Harry hated mistakes. He insisted on everything being perfect in front of an audience. Theo just couldn't keep up with him. Harry needed a replacement for Theo. And soon enough, one came along. In the summer of 1894, the Brothers Houdini performed in the same town as a song and dance act called the Floral Sisters. One of the sisters was a tiny, brown-haired girl called Beatrice Raymond. Like Harry, she had changed her name to go on stage. Her real name was Wilhelmina Rayner, but everyone called her Bess. She was 18 years old. Harry was 20. For Bess and Harry, it was love at first sight. Some stories say they got married only 2 weeks after they met. According to one of these stories, Bess had to sneak out of her house to go on a date with Harry because she was worried her mother would be mad. Later that evening, she was scared to go home. So, he proposed right then and there, and they got married that night. Even if that's not true, they certainly fell in love and got married quickly. It's also true that Bess's mother wasn't happy about it. Bess's family was Catholic. Harry was Jewish, the son of a rabbi. But Harry's mother didn't mind. She thought Bess was just wonderful, and so did Harry. Bess was more than a perfect wife. She was an ideal stage partner, too. Already used to performing, she was happy to sing and dance between Harry's acts, and she would always announce him with great style. She also learned the tricks quickly, so she could help him with everything. Bess was tiny, only 5 feet tall. That made Harry look big, and he was only about 5'5" or 6. Her size also meant that she could slip in and out of tight places, which was very useful for escape tricks. Even later on, when Harry did solo shows, Bess traveled with him everywhere. She managed his schedule, kept track of his performances, and made sure he remembered to change his shirt every day. Harry said she was the reason for his fame. She brought me luck, and it has been with me ever since. I never had any before I married her. Harry and Bess were together until the day he died. In the 1890s, Harry, with the help from Bess, performed in large halls called dime museums. For 10 cents, people could enter and watch strange and bizarre acts. Sword swallowers performing monkeys, jugglers. Houdini would do his metamorphosis trick. A small, serious-looking young man in a stubby tuxedo, Houdini stood on a box, waving to the crowds. With him was Bess, wearing a woolen tights and a puffy white blouse. First, Harry would pick a few people from the audience, a committee, to examine the apparatus. The apparatus was a tall cabinet with a trunk inside. The trunk was big enough to hold a person. The committee had to inspect the trunk. They knocked on all its sides, they looked inside. Finally, they would announce that everything seemed to be normal, no hidden doors or anything. Then Harry gave the committee a large black bag and some heavy tape. Following his instructions, they tied his hands together, helped him into the bag, and taped the bag shut as tightly as they could. Then the bag with Harry inside was put into the trunk. The trunk was also locked, tied securely with heavy ropes, and placed inside the cabinet. Once this was all done, Bess closed the curtain in front of the cabinet. "Now, ladies and gentlemen," she would say, pausing dramatically, "I shall clap my hand 3 times, and on my last clap, I ask you to watch closely." As she clapped, she stepped behind the curtain. Not 3 seconds later, the curtain swept open. And who was standing there before the audience? Harry Houdini. But what happened to Bess? Harry turned to the trunk, which was still sealed shut. With the help of the committee, he untied and unlocked the trunk to reveal the bag. And when they opened the bag, there was Bess, tied up the same way Harry had been. This was the same trick that Theo had messed up once before, but Bess was smaller. Metamorphosis trick. The apparatus inspected by the committee, shown here. Harry is placed in a sack and trunk as attendants tie his hands and close the sack. The trunk is tied with strong rope and locked with a heavy chain. The trunk is placed in the cabinet. Bess closes the curtain in front of the cabinet, addresses the audience, claps 3 times, and steps behind the curtain. When the curtain is opened, Harry is standing next to the trunk. He then opens the trunk and the sack to reveal Bess. How it's done. Harry unties his hands, cuts through the bottom of the sack with the hidden knife, and crawls out of a sliding panel on the back of the trunk. Bess then crawls through the panel and into the sack, replacing Harry. And she was so quick that she could do it in no time at all, exactly the way Harry wanted. The change, or metamorphosis, happened so fast that it looked like real magic.